Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azawi. Millions of Iraqis reside outside their motherland. Over recent decades, they have fled from wars, dictatorship, economic sanctions, invasion, and sectarian strife. While many live in Arab capitals, such as Damascus and Amman, others live in the West, in Europe and North America. The diaspora has established charities and lobby groups, sending aid and campaigning for democracy. Some in the diaspora have volunteered as election monitors. So how powerful and influential is the Iraqi diaspora? Do they champion or challenge the Iraqi government? And does the Iraqi diaspora reflect the same sectarian affiliations as on the ground back home? To discuss the role and impact of the Iraqi diaspora, I'm joined from Sulaymaniyah by Nidal Garmo, who runs for Victims of War and Poverty, a charity organization distributing medical aid to developing nations. And from Washington by Ra'ed Jarrar, Iraq consultant with the American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker-based organization working for humanitarian relief and peace. And from London by Hossein Mahmoud, representative of the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq. Welcome to Inside Iraq. Nidal, let me start with you. You are an Iraqi-American citizen. You are a pharmacist based in Detroit, Michigan. And for the past 10 years, you have been involved with Iraq, sending aid and money to Iraq. But since the invasion of 2003, you've been going to Iraq, taking surgical and medical equipment to Iraq. Exactly what draws you to Iraq? Is it your roots? Is it the desire to help? What is it?
It's a mixture of every good thing a human being can think. Years ago, I used to watch TV, especially Al Jazeera, and I used to get hurt when I used to see the African children are dying hungry. The people from Palestine are living this miserable life like refugees. I've never thought that one day Iraq, the safest, the most beautiful country, my family, all Iraqi people are my family, will go through this ordeal. And it's been a long time, so I decided to do something about it rather than watching the TV and crying every single day and night for them.
I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands of like you, and one of them is Ra'ed Jarrar. Ra'ed, you are an architect. Your master's thesis is in post-war reconstruction. In what way can you help Iraq, given your experience?
I was in Iraq during the sanction years and during the invasion. And I actually did do some reconstruction projects after the fall of Baghdad in 2003. Based on community organizations and Iraqi efforts. Unfortunately, all of these attempts that I started and many others started failed and could not continue because of the political and military situation in Iraq. Now, my dissertation, in my dissertation, I talked about how Iraq will go through 3 different phases of rebuilding. The first one is the immediate relief after the disaster and during the disasters that Iraq is going through. And after that, we will go to the reconstruction phase. And after that, it will allow us to reach to a development phase. Unfortunately, 6 years into the occupation after the fall of Baghdad, we're still in the relief phase. The reconstruction phase did not start yet. So it's still very, very primitive. And I think there are so many people with capacity to help rebuilding Iraq and initiate a reconstruction campaign that would bring the country back to life, but they are marginalized, mostly outside the country, and the ones inside the country cannot actually participate in a functioning campaign yet.
Given what he said, Hossein, that reconstruction is still way off, and you are involved with the human rights organization, is human rights a luxury for Iraqis right now? Is it too early to talk about it, given that it is almost the bête noire of the Iraqi government? When you work in Iraq, are you watched by Iraqi government?
Certainly. I mean, human rights is not a luxury. It's a basic right for human beings to live with freedom and their rights to be respected. I mean, considering that people in Iraq lived under dictatorship for 30 years, followed by another 6 years of devastation, war and occupation, these people deserve rights, they deserve freedom, and they deserve a simple life with basic rights included. Of course, when the Organization of Women's Freedom or any other organization tries to bring the violation of women's rights or children's rights or human rights into the attention of the authority and the international community, the Iraqi government don't like it because they think it's an exposition of their lack of governance of the country. And that's why the role of people like us who are involved in activism for human rights, for women's rights, for labor rights in Iraq is really vital, because I think if any given society, even if there's no war or no problems at all, if the human rights is not respected, if women's rights is not recognized by the government, then how can we talk about anything else, really? So that's why I think human rights is fundamental, and it's very, very detrimental as a foundation for any other
Yes.
laws or rules in that country or society.
Nidal, now that security is relatively better than in the past 2 years, at least that's what the Iraqi government keeps telling us, and US forces in Iraq, to what extent, security aside, are you facing bureaucracy? Are you facing sectarian affiliation? For instance, say, this medical equipment and surgical equipment you are bringing us, it should go to a certain part of Iraq, to a certain sect, rather than given and distributed equally.
Any place that I can put my foot on it. In Iraq, I would say 90% of Iraq is in need, if it's not 100%. If I'm able to do it, I will do it. Not any place that I specify. I look for the most needed areas, and if I have the chance and a little bit support from the government or from the ministries of health, I'll do it. I have a chance to do it. There's nothing will stop me from doing it. I'm not worried.
Will people tell you, Nidal, that we are, for instance, in northern Iraq, in the Chaldean, Ashurian community, we need this, you are one of us, help us, the Iraqi government,
Yes.
can look after other people? Do you face that?
Oh, I hear that. I hear that not only from my own community, the Chaldean community, which been supportive a lot of me, but not everybody. Everybody wants to benefit their own people. That's something natural. And I've been facing some hardships, being Christian, Chaldean, and with the situation with the war, it's not only hitting the Iraqi people. The problem is not only between Sunni and Shia and Christian and Muslims. It's also in America, in Michigan, my own community. I hear it from people, and I tell them, listen, the war doesn't know Muslim and Christian. When you go to a hospital, I'm taking medical and surgical supplies, medication. Anybody in need, in any country, in any place, you need to help them. You want to help the poor. There are a lot of poor in Iraq. You want to help the sick. My God, I've been visiting hospitals, and when you see a child that is dying in cancer, you're not going to look at his face or you asking his parent or what is he from. He's Iraqi child that needs help. That will not stop me. And of course, this is part of hardships. But if you are strong and you believe in God and you want to help people, you'll do it. You'll not worry about these kind of things, because we need to educate people and help them. They've already been suffering in Iraq, so we are there for them. I don't discriminate, and we are heading to the south very soon. Hopefully, they need us the most, especially in Basra.
We wish you the best, Nidal, in all your effort. But Ra'id Jarrar, the history of Iraq and the United States forever is intertwined because of the invasion of 2003. I'm almost reminded by the linkage between the United States and Vietnam. The two names, they have become synonymous. In Washington, where you live, there is a powerful organization called AIPAC, and that is the Jewish-Israeli lobby that promotes Israeli interests. Can we dream and can we think about one day the Iraqis will establish a powerful organization promoting Iraqi interests in the U.S.?
I mean, some people have been trying to do that. There are a number of Arab or Muslim pressure groups and some groups that try to promote Iraqi interest. I personally think that is important to have groups to promote dialogue between Iraq and the United States.
But given the division among the Iraqi community, will that be possible?
Yeah, but it will be possible, but not following the same model that AIPAC has been doing. I don't think, as a U.S. citizen as well, not just someone who was born in Iraq, as a U.S. citizen, I don't want to create yet another group that leeches on the U.S. and takes the United States interest as second as AIPAC has been doing. I mean, through my work, I've been thinking about how the U.S. can play a smarter role in the region to stop occupying and destroying nations like Iraq and to have better channels of dialogue. Now, unfortunately, so far, the Iraqi community in the United States has not been organized enough to start a strong dialogue group. They are not united enough, unfortunately, to ask for ending the occupation. We still have a lot of different opinions within the Iraqi community in the US. So it's more complicated than that. Where we stand now, I think that's too early to talk about. What we talk about now is that the US should first stop its crimes, its occupation, its daily destruction of Iraq. And then once that's done, we can talk about, rosy future and groups of
Indeed, you're absolutely right, Gerard, because the question of occupation versus liberation is still reverberating not only in Iraq but across the world. But Hossein, let us talk about the future. So in January, there will be a parliamentary election. In what way Iraqis living abroad can help? Some people are volunteering as election monitors, given the fact that the election of 2005 and even before, it was not kosher. It was not Westminster kind of election, was it?
Sure, that's true. I mean, the first election which was held, it was held in a very turmoil situation where there was absolutely no security, and these political parties available there, they were even not known properly to the people in Iraq. I mean, there was absolutely lack of security, whereas considering that somehow that the situation is calmed down now, there is a chance for people to know who to vote for, and then there's a chance for political parties and groups and organizations as well as individuals to put forward themselves, basically to represent people's interests in the Iraqi parliament. And we in our organization, we will be discussing soon how to actually be part of the monitoring of these upcoming elections by, as you said, to become a volunteer to monitor the elections. And I think people abroad, they can take positive steps and that they can be part of something. It's really a matter of responsibility towards people in Iraq and towards the political processes there. I mean, I might not agree with every single political party or people who are on the list to be elected, but then as individuals, as campaigners, and as political groups, and as people who are progressives, and we want Iraqi people to have a better future, then we are responsible. We feel like we have responsibility to do something.
Before I go to Nidal, Ra'ed Jarrar, just a small comment. Can the Iraqi community living abroad exposed to democracy name and shame Iraqi politicians and Iraqi parties involved in some nefarious activities during the elections?
I mean, it depends on which Iraqi community we're talking about. Unfortunately, there are big chunks of the Iraqi diaspora that played a shameful role in supporting and continues to support the occupation of Iraq and prolonging the occupation. Many of the Iraqis outside have not been participating in the political process because of different reasons. So, I mean, it depends on which Iraqis we're talking about. I think the real accountability of the corruption and bad politicians in Iraq will come eventually from inside Iraq. Iraqis from inside Iraq who vote, who live inside the country, and they are living the consequences of the corruption, will hold all of these politicians accountable. I don't think waiting for the diaspora to judge the political process will actually make any difference. The change
it's too early for that at any rate. But let me go to Nidal. Nidal, it is no secret that even ration coupons that most Iraqi families depend upon for daily subsistence nowadays is being sold on the black market. The reason why I bring that is, how can you be sure that the medical equipment and the surgical equipment end at the right place, the last recipient? Do you have a monitoring system? Do you follow up on these donations?
It's hard to imagine. When I started doing this seriously, I was watching TV and seeing all these people are dying. And I heard about some organizations in Michigan, one of them called World Medical Relief, which is based in Detroit. I was very lucky. It was very close to my house, and I drove to them. The first time I went to their building, and that was the time when Iraq was getting bombed big time. And I know there were a lot of victims of this war that are lacking medical and surgical supplies. People, I heard they were sleeping on the floor. There's not enough hospital beds. And I know that I've heard and I've seen it in the Al Jazeera and all the channels. So when I went there and I saw how many medical and surgical supplies, and of course they met with me and they approved me. And since then, World Medical Relief, when I witnessed that they've been supporting a lot of people, a lot of countries that are in need, I sponsored 2 medical shipments. And they told me, you know, a lot of people in Iraq, they don't deliver them, and I've heard that. So I said, how? They said, but we'd rather people to go themselves. And I told them, I'll do it. They didn't believe me in the beginning. They said, you are gonna do it? I said, I'll do it. And what does it take? I tried, I sponsored 2 shipments and I delivered it, and I checked hospitals that needs it, and I videotape, and I wait for it. Like this now, right now I'm in Iraq, in the north part of Iraq, but I'm planning to go to Baghdad also. I visited like 5 hospitals, and with NOCAN company or NOCAN groups, they help me and they support me, and this is the first time I'm getting support from the Iraqi people themselves. That made my life much easier. They took a lot of pressure from me. They paid for my trip. So we went and they showed me all the hospitals around, and actually by yesterday, and if you see what I've seen, I mean, my God, I've been crying for 2 days. These kids are left. They have cancers, kids and adults. There's one hospital. I spoke to the people. They are mixing chemotherapy. Do you know what they told me? They told me that we have enough for 17 patients only. Do you believe this is not fair? A richest country like Iraq are suffering from not having medical medicine. This is something that the whole world...
It's a heart-wrenching story, Nidal.
We have to go on.
We have thousands of stories like that. But let me go to Hozan.
Yeah, but we need to...
Hozan, given the sad story related by Nidal, there are many sad stories happening in Iraq. One of them is torture. It has become endemic in Iraq. I'm sure in your organization you hear stories and documented cases. When you meet with Iraqi officials, whether in London or through your organization back in the old country, do you tell Iraqis that this is not acceptable anymore, it should be stopped? People been crying for the past 6 years, say, stop it, but it keeps going on.
Certainly. Of course, I mean, Organization of Women's Freedom actually was among the first who have discovered rape and torture in Iraqi prisons. And the first prison was discovered by our activists was Al-Qazimiya prison, whereby children, babies and women, they were all locked up there, and they were raped and abused by both Iraqi police as well as American occupiers. So, I mean, we raised that issue. We held a big press conference in Baghdad, attended by local, national and other Arabic news channels, and that's how this issue actually got known to the people and to the government. And since then, the Interior Ministry, we have had meetings and seminars with them, and we've put pressure on them actually that rape and torture is not acceptable. Holding children or women who give birth to baby in prison is just a crime. And another issue is really the issue of execution that we are campaigning against at the moment. There are several female prisoners who are the Iraqi government wanted to execute them. I mean, let alone that they are female and that they don't deserve such fate, but actually we don't want that capital punishment to be brought back to the Iraqi system. It's the biggest violation of human rights, and we are actually campaigning tirelessly against this, and we want to erase it from the Iraqi constitution, and that people in Iraq have had enough torture and execution, and this has to stop really, and we are working on that now.
Nidal, last question to you. Tell me, do you get support? And what I know about you, you are a one-woman show. You do it all by yourself. You have that zeal, that get up and go. Do you get support from the Iraqi politicians in Baghdad? Do you get support from the Washington area? Is somebody's helping you?
Yes. Well, it started really better now, and I've been seeking help. Financially, I've got a support from AACC based in California, one of the group, and also I met with another person, my good friend, Dhafar Hashim Al-Dilemi. What a wonderful person. I've been getting calls. I met with Dr. Ayad Allawi, and I met with Mithal Al-Alusi, and and also with Dr. Saleh Al-Mutlaq, which actually he called me a few times. He believed in my work, and I believe. I met with a lot of politicians. The Iraqi ambassador from Washington, who was my keynote speaker, and he's been giving me support. And the community is starting to move really in much better direction with me.
Thank you.
We've been getting help, especially
we wish you more help, more
Mr.
support
Dhafar.
from the Iraqi community and the Iraqi politicians. Raed, I would like to end up with you. You know very well education is the way out for the Iraqis. And do you deal with universities in Washington? Is there any linkage established between American universities and Iraqi universities? Because that would be the way, wouldn't it?
There are some U.S. universities that have links with Iraqi universities, and I know of a number of projects of sending books to Iraqi universities and other things. It seems like the biggest part of the problem is not that, though. It seems that the biggest part of the problem is the brain drain. Iraqi universities don't have enough professors and teachers and people who can actually give this material to students. So I think it takes us to the first square of how can we help Iraqis end this occupation so that they can go back home and start building their country by themselves. How can we help the 5 million displaced Iraqis go back home and participate in many important things like education and reconstruction.
Raed Jarrar, Nidal Garmo, Hossein Mahmoud, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To watch the show online, please go to our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.